It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That goober of a man, Clinton Yates, will join us coming up at 4:30 today to continue to discuss the Wizards' move to Virginia. Also, a very interesting article at Anscape today, the site that Clinton works for, of course, a sub-site of ESPN.com, on specifically how Black DC residents are reacting to the move, and specifically Black DC residents that actually go to Capital One Arena. We talk so much about this in theory, but what about folks that actually go to the games? Well, one of Anscape's reporters went to Capital One Arena and reported on such things. Imagine that, reporting. So we will talk to him coming up at 6 o'clock tonight. But I Anthony, as I walked over to the studio out of my prep area, Essig comes out of where you're sitting right now, and he goes, "Good luck. We riled him up a little bit today."
Is he talking about the Rooster or is he talking about Linnell?
I think he's talking about the fan base.
Oh, the fan base.
So people listening that have carried themselves over, crossed the magical threshold of 4 o'clock from their show into our show.
Yep.
Apparently a little spicy. Because they asked the question, and it's so funny, right? Linnell and I yesterday had a very civil conversation.
We already knew it was going to be civil.
Civil, insightful. I thought it was really good. It generated a lot of interesting YouTube comments. Never read the comments coming at 5:30. We never yelled at each other. We made our points. Then they come in today and ask if Ron Rivera is incompetent. All right. We're just going there, huh? It's actually an interesting question. Kind of. Whether he is or not, like, what does it mean? At this point, whether he's competent or not, he's still getting fired in a couple weeks, which at this point we say flippantly because it's a foregone conclusion. But, this is a grown man, and probably, by the way, this is the end for him, as it certainly is an NFL head coach. I don't know. Here's a fun one. Can Ron Rivera do enough as a defensive coordinator the next 3 weeks to get another coordinator job? He would be an interesting DC potentially. Like if you're a young first-time head coach, would you potentially hire Rivera as your DC and assistant head coach to have someone around who's done it? Or do you look at his career as a head coach and go, I'm actually not that interested in that?
Nope.
I mean, McVay did it with Wade Phillips, but Wade's reputation as a defensive coordinator, even if it didn't work out for him in his few tries as a head coach, his reputation as a defensive coordinator was exceptional. Ron hasn't been a defensive coordinator since 2000. When did he get to Carolina? 2011 is when Cam was drafted. 2010 was the last time he was an offensive coordinator. You were like in middle school, if not younger.
I was on my way to high school.
Yeah.
I was a ninth grader. Would have been a ninth grader that year.
Yeah. So, needless to say, I don't know whether that's going to be in Ron's future. Feels like he'll be a consultant advisor type, but we'll see. I think the funny thing is like the answer is obviously yes. Is Ron Rivera incompetent? Which I don't say to be mean, but like Essig recited a definition. Let me pull up the definition real quick. Essig just like had it off the top of his head. I was like, for all the silly stuff that you do, you just got definitions in your head like that? Incompetent. Incompetent means not having or showing the necessary skills to do something successfully. A forgetful and utterly incompetent assistant would be your word to use in a sentence. Anthony, revenge time. Spell incompetent.
Too easy. INCOMPETENT. Incompetent.
Well done.
Thank you.
I was really hoping you wouldn't mess up because I don't have a bell. I don't have ding. Oh no, he's missed it. He's incompetent at spelling incompetent. He lacks the necessary skills to accomplish the job. I mean, I think from an organizational standpoint, from a communication standpoint, from a human being management standpoint, like there's some stuff where Ron scores higher than in other areas. But I also think that, like, one of the interesting things about his tenure here, and I know Linnell was, like, screaming about this point, was he has leaned very heavily on his coordinators here. That is a choice he has made to delegate and let them do their thing. And I think it's two hands off. Like, I disagree with the approach, but that approach can work. He just didn't execute it. Is that incompetent, or did he do it bad? Does he lack the skill, or did he just not use it? I don't know. I tend to think that when you've got 3 winning seasons in your entire coaching career, head coaching career that spans 15 years, nearly in the NFL, you probably lack the skills to do the thing very well, especially when there was a point where you may have had the best offensive and defensive football player in the league on your team. Cam was that good for 2015 they did make the Super Bowl, but Luke Kuechly was the best defensive player in football probably at that time. It was him. I mean, Aaron Donald was starting to get going. There's a couple other guys, obviously J.J. Watt in the 2010s who were dominant, but like Luke was a force. And not only did they only make, one deep playoff run in 2015, the year they put it all together and went 15-1 before getting crushed by the Broncos in the Super Bowl, but they only had 3 winning seasons, and he's got 0 here. So I don't know. It's just, I actually don't think it's that interesting of a discussion the more I talk about it. Like, I realize that, Chris was like, he's just bad. It's not full-on incompetence. Linnell's like ready to light everything on fire because that's Linnell's thing. But at the end of the day, it's just, to me, it's sad. And it's reflective of a franchise that is like flushing itself of all the incompetence, right? Piece by piece, as time goes, everyone who worked for Dan Snyder is going to be gone. Everyone who got their job because that's the best Dan could do, or the person that Dan, who is 1,000% incompetent as an NFL owner, or was, the best person that he thought was there for the job. But that's how incompetence, like, when we talk about the stuff, and it's like, that's not the owner's fault, it's this person's fault. It's like, well, the reason that person has a job is because it starts with the owner. The reason, good organizations start at the top, and why ownership is the thing that tends to carry over, is because the judgment that ownership has determines who gets the highest and most powerful positions. And then depending on how well they do at that person hires the next layer, who hires the next layer, who hires the next layer. And so if you get an incompetent owner who hires an incompetent team president, who hires an incompetent GM, who hires an incompetent head coach, who hires an incompetent staff, clearly there will be different levels of incompetence. And somewhere in there, they might hire a competent person and one thing might go right, or, half those might be good hires and the other half stink. But eventually, the good ones will leave, and you replace them probably with someone who's incompetent. And that's all this is. Like, incompetent, bad, whatever. Dan hired Bruce. That was whatever that was. Dan then hired Ron. Ron hired a GM in Martin Mayhew, who had very little success as an actual lead GM. By the way, Ron was given power that he never had in Carolina, that he absolutely was not up for in the personnel stuff. And then they hired bad staff after bad staff, whether it was Scott Turner and the people that he hired. There are some hits. Yeah, Drew Terrell was a good wide receivers coach. Matt Scal was a fine offensive line coach. Not elite, but fine. Then obviously Jack on the defensive side was hit or miss over the course of his years until there was no midseason turnaround this year. But the staff underneath him was terrible. And so, by NFL standards, in fairness to those guys, I'm not saying that I could outcoach them, and they'd probably be good at your local high school. But this is the league. These are the best of the best. And so, incompetence, bad, whatever. I guess the good news is it'll all be over soon. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Apparently, everyone's fired up, though, so let's do this. Let's take some calls on this next. 301-230-0980. Your Commanders' thoughts, like, Commanders free-flowing mailbag, if you will, but, call version, voicemail for the next 15 minutes or so. And then Clinton Yates will join us coming up at 4:30. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, of course, on your radio, 980 AM, 106.7 HD2 on your HD radio, and streaming live always on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Phone lines are wide open. 301-230-0980. It's the Ace Law listener line. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Anything Commanders, Jason. Happy to talk about it for the next 10-ish minutes. And then we talked to Clinton Yates coming up at 4:30. I did. So Rachel and I, my wife, have been meal prepping more recently, and my speech pattern is a little syncopated right now. Feels like I'm taking some extra breaths. It's because I took a bite of sandwich that was way too big right before, or unbeknownst to me, way too close to when we came out of break. And that's something that as a radio professional I can do better at. And so I apologize to you, the audience. But also, the sandwich that I took a bite of was a chicken salad sandwich. And I did bring Anthony some famous chicken salad. Oh, you still haven't unwrapped it yet.
Nah, I was going to wait until Clint Yates.
Oh, that's fair. In case you had to talk on the radio?
Yeah.
Unlike me, who dove into my sandwich in the break and now has to talk on the radio.
Is that a fine?
No, I'm not.
I'm
If I had like a mouthful of food, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that would have been great.
What was that you just said?
No, I was just pretending as though.
I know. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the phones. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Derek. Derek, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Awesome. Thanks for taking my call. First of all, just wanted to thank you guys. You guys are awesome. I've made a few YouTube comments before. I've seen you guys have responded to those or liked those. I've called a couple of times. I listen to you guys every day.
Appreciate
on
that,
the
Derek.
YouTube stream. Love your points of view, your analysis. It's always great. You, Anthony, Logan, all that. But, just some thoughts. I mean, I wanted to respond. I was going to write a comment on your vibe check video from yesterday. How you were saying, we never done or somebody was saying that we never done a proper rebuild. And so the only time that I had ever felt like maybe it might start going in the right direction was in 2015 after we brought in McLuhan, because I thought that he was bringing in a good group of people or good players. But then that quickly went off the deep end because of whatever happened there.
Right.
But aside from just responding to that, I just wanted to, say, I do feel very hopeful that we are hopefully going to do this the right way finally. The ownership that we have in place now probably isn't driven by ego or isn't trying to make the splash higher. So I'm happy that now they're finally going to go towards this analytics-based approach with Eugene Shen and everything like that. Hopefully they bring in the right GM. Hopefully they bring in a head coach that can, in my point of view, I'd like to continue working with Sam. I'd like for them to use those high draft picks and just build a good group of core players on the roster so that basically you can put Sam in and he'll be successful. I don't know if he'll be elite or anything, but he'll be exactly what you were mentioning about Kirk Cousins, that, he'll be good enough.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I see about one of the points I want to mention about Sam, and the reason I still believe in him, is how many people gave up on Jared Goff?
Oh, yeah. No,
the
Rams gave up on Jared Goff. And by the way, it might have been the right move for them at the time, but Detroit had more time.
Exactly. And when you put Jared Goff in the right situation with the right staff, with the right head coach, with the right offensive coordinator, you can, and with the right team around the quarterback, you can do a lot. And so that's kind of just what I'm hopeful for. I'm just hopeful for, a great offseason where, we are a desired destination, like everyone keeps saying. And so hopefully we can build a great team, a great staff around that, and just start the proper rebuild. And, hey, hopefully it could be a quick turnaround, because I do think we have some good pieces in place already. But, just happy to see what comes out of this offseason starting in about 3 weeks now.
Yeah, Derek, thanks so much.
Call,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the kind words and bringing up a bunch of great points. Derek just bought us a whole segment, Anthony, because there's like 3 things that he said that I actually I'm glad he brought up, one of which I hadn't thought of before, one of which I will save, which is more of kind of the Kirk Cousins comparisons, because that is a comment that some folks have made, and like varying versions of that, or Dak Prescott or Goff, and never read the comments today. So I'm gonna go back to the other point first, and then if there's time to talk QB real quick, I will. But when McLuhan was here, that was my first year on the beat, was 15 when he was brought in. One of the things they actually had is something that they've severely lacked under Rivera's leadership, which is a clear organizational vision. Now, Scott had a ton of issues personally, which hopefully he's gotten straightened out, and, you wish him the best. I don't think he was a bad dude necessarily. He had a problem, and people battle their demons, and that's incredibly human. I think we all know people who have, and unfortunately for Scott, that was a part of his story here. But he had a vision of how you build a football team. and his vision was inside out, to the point that he drafted a guard at whatever pick Sheriff was, 4 guard. And we had a top 10 pick, and we took a guard. Yeah, but that guard helped you have one of the best offensive lines in football, which helped Kirk Cousins be better because you didn't have to worry about the pressure because you had Trent Williams and you had Brandon Sheriff, and you could run the football even with guys like, Fat Rob back in the day. Remember him? Yeah. So you had a way, and then obviously they started the John Allen, kind of stuff the next year, and then it was Payne, and then the problem was they kept going and kept drafting defensive linemen. And if they had just done the first 3, I think it would have been smart. But the problem was when they got on the board at 2 in 2020, Chase was thought to be a generational player. And so you don't pass on that guy. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Point is, they had a plan. And I've never felt, and that plan was, for a short time, something that everybody was on board with. It was going to help Jay and what he wanted to do offensively, defensively. Like, they had a plan on how they wanted to do things, the kind of players that they wanted. And the front office was like, we have a vision. The coaches are going to execute it. We're cohesive. And unfortunately, because of the characters that were involved on a human level, it failed tremendously. And it even failed tremendously. It got cut off before it could ever get to anywhere meaningful. And obviously, McLuhan also royally screwed up the next year. I guess there was 2 years until they got John Allen, but they royally screwed up the Josh Doxson pick. A hill that I died on. I thought that kid was going to be awesome because he would show at every camp, and you're like, phew, he's so smooth. And then he wouldn't do anything in the regular season. But, whether it was Crowder or whether it was whatever, like, they had guys that they liked in a style and a type. Even the mistakes they made were within that type. It just feels like with Rivera, they've consistently been throwing darts at a dartboard or at multiple dartboards. And you're like, hey, we're playing here. We're playing at one dartboard. And that lack of organizational vision, are we a run-first team? Are we built around our defense? Do we want to be a high-flying offense? Do we want to be a speed team? Do we want to be a power team? We're running zone. We're running man. There's no cohesiveness year to year, sometimes within a year. They came out of last year being like, we want to run the football more. We think that's the way to win. And then they went and hired the most pass-happy OC on the market. And again, like, I loved the hire. I thought it would go very differently than it has. But it wasn't what they said they wanted. And that's the problem. They jump around. You have no cohesive vision. Your roster doesn't get built in a way that fits your scheme. And your personnel doesn't match each other. You can survive with this O-line in the NFL if your quarterback is Jacoby Brissett, because he's a veteran who knows how to get rid of the football on time. If you have a young quarterback who has a knack for holding the football, you need a better offensive line than this. So things like that, I think, are stuff that, like, a Scott McLuhan, when he's at his best, mistakes that he wouldn't make. And when we talk about Ron's, actually, to circle it back to the first segment, to talk about Ron's incompetence, right? It's that lack of general vision that you need as a general manager. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, Clinton Yates joins us for an interesting conversation. Continuing, there's been more news today. Virginia lawmakers speaking out against the Wizards' move to their state. Yes, people on the Virginia side not exactly thrilled. And also just a larger conversation that kind of ropes in something that I've wanted to talk about with Clinton for a couple of weeks now, the Shohei Ohtani contract. Who gets paid in sports and who pays for sports? We'll make it make sense next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And on this Wednesday, it is our pleasure to welcome in, as we do every Wednesday during the football season, my good friend Clinton Yates. Clinton, happy Wednesday.
Hello, sir. How are you? It's actually raining in Los Angeles, so I'm currently at home making soup. That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
What kind of soup?
So right now, I threw some ginger, some garlic, and some turkey necks in my chicken bouillon, and then I'm going to add a little rosemary to it later and add some other vegetables and make, some chicken soup for the soul, buddy.
Yeah, chicken soup for the soul. That is, I think, the name of a book that did very well in the early 2000s.
It might be older than that, but
maybe 90s, yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be. That book was around when I was a kid, so at least I believe it was. So, yeah, no, I'm just kind of freestyling it. Went to the grocery store this morning. I said, turkey necks, I like those. So I threw them in the soup.
There you go. So it's really poultry soup.
Correct. Yeah.
For the soul.
Right.
For the soul. All right. So your colleague at Anscape, Martenzie Johnson, wrote a piece, what Black DC stands to lose with the Wizards' move to Virginia. He did this crazy thing, Clinton, called reporting. He went out to Capital One Arena. He talked to a bunch of folks, specifically black folks around Capital One Arena, because we've talked kind of theoretically, hypothetically, about the loss of the Wizards for the city that is called Chocolate City. But he went out and actually talked to people who go to the games. I know you talked to him about this piece and obviously read it. What did you make of the piece and, anything else you want to add about the context of it?
This is obviously very near and dear to my heart as somebody that was born and raised in D.C., somebody that went to games at the Capitol Center, Hoyas games, Capitals games, Bullets games. They, of course, never played there as the Wizards. Somebody who went to games at what was then MCI Center and sort of grew up with that building and eventually became a season ticket holder at one point. So it is very personal to me. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about the larger context of this, which Kinsey touched on a bit, which is how much are y'all going to take from black folks in D.C.? Like, just on a basic level, like, how do you justify that in your mind if you're a franchise? And I'm not going to get after Theodore specifically because I've done enough of that. But even if he wasn't the owner, if you're a franchise that claims to be about community, I think there's a larger question of just, okay, we understand in the business world of America, you've got a right to ply your wares wherever you like. But why would you really want to do this outside of greed? All of these conversations about, it's unsafe downtown and, the city screwed this up and this, that, and the third, it just feels like a sellout move on a lot of levels to just move to a place that people don't even really already congregate. That's not going to make it better. So the soul, if we're talking about friggin' chicken soup, the soul of this is really important because, at a time when people did not support that team, people did not support that place, a lot of black folks down there got jobs. A lot of folks hung around to make it vibrant, make it anything. Because the product on the court or the product on the ice wasn't always what people wanted. So, it's just what he showed is the reveal of such a cultural disconnect that I think the people at the top of Monumental have with the residents of D.C., never mind black folks that are willing to come in the city and stay in the city to watch those crappy-ass teams play.
Again, Tenzi will join us coming up at 6 o'clock. We'll dive more into the details of the piece with him. But I actually think that links to the conversation that I was planning on having with you 2 weeks ago until this story broke, which is a larger conversation of which this is a subset of. But the larger conversation is really about all of us, not race. It really is about class, which is like who gets paid in sports and who has to pay for it. And I had that thought on the heels of the Ohtani contract, where you just see this number and you can dive into it and talk about how the actual, if you're an economist, the actual value is actually only about $35 million a year because of inflation and whatever. By the time that he gets the money, whatever, the numbers on paper are 10 years, $700 million. And as most of us can't afford to go to a game certainly in the same frequency or maybe in the same seats that we used to, I just think that's I guess the question, Clinton, would be is there a breaking point and are we getting closer to it where the pro sports bubble bursts because owners are making money hand over fist? And at this point, you have players that are going to be Like, there's a rookie in the NBA, whether now or soon, that is going to be the first billion-dollar earner on salary alone. That's crazy. And I realize,
crazy.
like, players should get paid. I'm always for that. But at what
Yeah.
point do we look at the people who are supplying the money, us, and go, no, you could just not make us pay as much?
I think this brings up an interesting point because the two are connected. There is a corollary, but I also think it adds to the conversation about just what is an experience when we're talking about pro sports. And that's why when you kind of, not you, but when one kind of lends themselves on the side of siding with a billionaire, it just sounds so obtuse because it's like, wait a second. Like, what do you actually want out of this? Number one, the Caps have won exactly one Stanley Cup. They have had playoff runs for years and years. That experience is one thing. But the Wizards, at a certain point, this doesn't become worth it really, literally for anybody. I think you're right. I'll get to Shohei in a second. But the purpose of what D.C. is a basketball town, and the Wizards specifically existing in Capital One Arena was part of the experience. People enjoyed gathering as a community in that location and its environs to be a part of it. And if you just move it somewhere else, that changes drastically. And we know that the price is going to go up. You can just look at how much money they're asking for from Virginia. So, like, that alone, I think, is part of it, which is how expensive does this get before nobody wants to do it, or only people there are operating in some sort of a Super Bowl type method. You've covered the Super Bowl. You know how it is. Home fans are not at that game. You don't want an environment like that for every single ball game, just so that you can say you got a better land deal. As it relates to Ohtani, baseball is a little different because, number one, there's more games by a lot. And so, what the fan experience is something slightly different. But I do think you're right. I feel that, listen, if it's going to cost $20 more, across the board for every person to go into Dodger Stadium and see Ohtani next year, that is going to price a lot of people out. And for a fan base like this one in Los Angeles that is primarily Mexican, look, that doesn't exactly bode well either. People like rooting for front runners. People like having top dollar talent on their team. But I think you're onto something there, Craig. I don't know what that point is where all of a sudden everybody says, well, heck, if they're making all this money off of TV revenue, I'll just stay my butt home and watch it on TV because my $500 is better spent on a flat screen than it is spent buying things down at the arena that nobody wants to go to anyway, And so I do think that the price is one thing, but again, I just feel that these owners are so disconnected from what the actual experiences of being at a ball game. It's not priceless. It has a cost. It's America in 2023, soon to be 2024. And you look around and just say, literally, that old joke, in this economy? Absolutely not.
Right. And the thing is, like, I always, and Clinton Yates, of course, commentator, ESPN, also writer for Anscape and ESPN.com, is with us, and also now the host of ESPN Daily most days. So you can check out ESPN Daily, daily. So to continue that thought, though, I was always someone, to go back to kind of where you started that answer, I was always someone that when people complained about how much money players were making, I was like, what do you want? The owners to make it? And it's like, no.
Right.
Like, the players are the talent. Let the players make it. But, like, to take it away from Ohtani, does Dave Lillard need to make $62 million to play basketball? Like, that seems insane. And now I feel like such an old man yelling at a cloud saying that out loud. But even if you want to look at the TV side, like, cable's expensive as hell. Or Fubo TV or YouTube TV. Like, we're paying for this as fans. And how the owners and the players split it up is, of course, relevant. And at some point, there is like a capitalism, level to this. It's like, well, you are what people are worth paying for. But my question really, and I don't expect you to have an answer. This is a thought exercise between the two of us. Is like, where does that bubble burst? And I think the community part is really interesting too. And I'm trying to remember what I was listening to earlier today that was talking about this. But community in general is down, right? Community where you used to organized religion for years, for centuries, was the place that people went for community, and there was fewer people participating in organized religion. I'm not putting a right or wrong on that. It just is a fact of modern Western life that is true. And so sports is a place that we still find that. And so I do think that there is room still in that bubble before it bursts. But if folks aren't careful, it will burst.
Absolutely. And if you look at the changes that have been made to Capital One Arena specifically over the last couple of years, number one, putting a sports book in there. Number two, trying to basically build a bottle service club courtside. Like, it's just, you think to yourself, what are we actually going for here? And, since we're in the thought exercise to kind of spin this forward, I do think there is a world in which one of these guys who owns a team, and, you could put this on any sport, particularly someone who did not make their money in sports, will eventually understand what the purpose of community is and realize that if people aren't willing to show up, none of this matters otherwise. Players don't want to play in empty buildings with fans who don't care, and it looks bad on television for partners and everybody else. I don't know if it's a burst bubble, but at some point there's going to be an owner that says, you know what, I'm not charging outrageous prices. I'm making the money anyway because more people here who want to be here more often is going to matter. The subject of, let's just say, basketball-related income, to kind of get into the chalk talk of it, is not exactly separate. It is related because I do think that it's kind of a two-channel discussion. It's, man, that guy's making a lot of money. And B, well, they deserve it, but if they deserve that much money and the owners are clearly making that much money on them, why am I paying so much? You know what I'm saying? And, yes, it's a tough thing to wrangle with. And, I think about parents now who want to be a part of those communities. You talked about the organized element of society and where we are, in the Western world. My dad's been in California for a week, and half of what we talk about are games I went to at RFK with him to see the football team. He's currently a Nat season ticket holder, and I'll pop in and go to games with him there. Games we went to see the Hoyas and this, that, and the third. The memories are what matter, but if they don't even have the opportunity to get off the ground because the economic hurdle is so high, at that point, at what cost? What have you done? You know what I mean? And that's where I think that it's really difficult for people who, A, aren't from the area, or B, have no real vested interest in any of these properties or communities outside of the dollars that they can make, just don't understand. There is a shelf life on this stuff. You can see your fan base walking right out of the door because it happened at FedEx. This is not some foreign concept. If it gets too ridiculous, people will stop showing up. And I think that's as important as anything. That is a threat, but just as kind of an overall understanding of what really will happen if this doesn't go well. They've made the playoffs. I mean, they've won a postseason series, 6 times in 30 years? Come on, guys.
Yeah, they've never made a conference finals since the year after they won the title, which is the longest streak of any team that has been around since that time. They also haven't won 50 games. They're the only team that, et cetera, et cetera. Right. What you just said sparked two thoughts, and one of them is off of something John Thompson III said to Grant and Danny last week when he was like, guys, it's only 4.5 miles. And ultimately, we're going to serve our fans better. And my response, and we're hoping to get JT3 on. We've had some scheduling snafus as everyone's schedule is crazy right now. But my thing would be who are you serving? Do I have any doubt that a fan that's going to go to this new amazing arena in Alexandria in a vacuum will probably have a better time and more options and all the things than they would at Capital One Arena? Yes, but it's going to be a different fan, and that's important. And if you see this in, for instance, to go outside of the Beltway by a lot, for an example, who goes to San Francisco 49ers games now when they were at Candlestick just outside the city versus the Santa Clara, tech corporate crowd, bunch of people in suits? It's a very different experience, and it's a different experience in the stadium for the players and how the crowd reacts to stuff. But you talk about those memories of no one's being like, oh, I remember when I was there with my corporate client. It's no, you have the memories with your family. You have the memories. You specifically just talked about these memories with your pops. Shout out to Earl, of course. And and to kind of the second thing to kind of bring that together to show what it can be. You watch Welcome to Wrexham, yeah? Are you at least familiar with it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Wrexham, and I know where you're going with this. There's something that can be achieved when you tap into that money can't pay for.
Right. And so, Rob, for those that don't know, Wrexham, soccer team in Wales, falling on hard times, Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, Hollywood superstars, buy it. And their whole mission statement was not, we got to make money on this. It was, we've got to make this good for the community. And in the way that they've acted, they have done that. They've also told an incredible story and series of stories through a documentary. And between the documentary, how well they've done with the club and decisions they've made about the club, I guarantee you they're making the money anyway, probably much more than if they had tried to employ a money-making strategy. And that's the thing I don't understand, Clinton, is people, I think, want to be sports owners and employ quote-unquote business strategies to sports that don't apply to sports. And if you look at the way the teams that succeed, they do it a community-based way, and the teams that fail, they do it the football team way the last 25 years under Snyder, and you wind up with an empty FedEx Field every weekend.
You saw it in Atlanta when the Atlanta baseball team moved from Fulton County Stadium all the way out to Smyrna, which is in Cobb County. Totally different experience. And people in ATL will still tell you that they haven't been to Braves games since that happened. You saw it when Europe tried to break off with the Super League in terms of those differences, to get to a soccer example. And the communities are like, you are absolutely not doing this. We are going to burn your building down if you try this. Like, literally physically take to the streets. And this is where it moves from anger to kind of sadness, because if somebody who's been in this town that long and is allegedly sold against the likeness of this community in order to make money still doesn't get that part, man, that's sad. And it's also kind of professionally embarrassing, because if you're not even competing, the very least you could do is make it centralized, make it fun, and make it accessible. To somehow try to imply that both are what the standard of your operation is, when, hello, y'all ain't won jack outside of one season on the ice. Like, I'm sorry, do you think people are stupid? This is the capital of the United States of America, buddy. People understand what the value of a dollar is almost better than anywhere else in the country, because the folks who make those decisions are right there. And so I just, like, it's odious in a way that is not just to my personal sensibilities as a DC native. It just feels so nakedly incorrect and greedy that you're just kind of like, dude, do you have any idea what's going on in the world right now? Because this is flatly a bad look. Never mind a bad decision.
Yeah. Last thing for you real quick on the way out, on that line, again, Clinton Yates, ESPN, with us. Like, if this happens in Milwaukee, if this happens in, Atlanta, Detroit, do you think it's the same as it is here because of exactly what you just said? Like, people in D.C., because of the intelligence of people here, let's toot our own horns. This is like the smartest metro area in maybe the world, certainly in the country, with all due respect to many other highly educated places. But people are willing to stand on values here in a way that they are not in a lot of other places. Like, do you think that is an actual real compounding thing, or is that a thing that we're telling ourselves to feel better because it feels like then we get to stand on a moral high ground?
The license plates have said taxation without representation for a reason. District folks understand, black or otherwise, what it's like to be disenfranchised from your own situation and not being given agency in what it is that you are ultimately working towards. I know that sounds a little high-minded for a discussion about a sports team, but it matters. This is part of what the fabric of what DC is about. And so if you start doing things that people feel is unfair, unnecessary, or even untoward, you're going to hear it, and it's going to cost you. And I do think that there's an element there about the district in specific. Never mind the demographics. The political situation of the circumstances around how the city exists at all plays into this. Things people know. Things people who attended, Georgetown University, which, by the by, just got paying a bunch of families off for the parents who they never paid, who were indentured slaves. Like, if you go to Georgetown, you should know this. You should have a much better understanding of this as an institute of higher learning, never mind a person in America. And it's just kind of sad to think that somebody who allegedly claimed to be such a large part of what the district was trying to do seems so openly and willing to gut what it is that he built and that other people built around him for the sake of just goodwill.
Clinton Yates, ESPN. Catch him on ESPN Daily. What was the topic today?
Topic today was part 2 of Brittany Griner's return from Russia. I sat down with TJ Quinn to have a 2-part discussion. It's the year anniversary around this month. It was about 2 weeks ago last year.
Yeah, TJ did a huge piece on it.
Yeah, exactly. He revealed some new details about exactly what happened in terms of the actual human exchange of people that had to go down, and her time in a literal prison camp in Russia. Pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. So if you want more on that, and of course the biggest stories in sports daily, Clinton's got them on ESPN Daily, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course read his work at ESPN. And occasionally, if you watch television, he'll show up in a box talking to Tony Reali and 3 other people.
Correct.
It's a little show that's been around for 5 seconds called Around the Horn. Maybe it'll succeed if it gives you a little bit more time. Go check on your soup.
I will.
All right.
Happy Kwanzaa, Aunt.
Happy Kwanzaa, man.
Had to make sure Ant's awake over there. All right, see you, Clinton.
Bye. I'll talk to you later. See.
That is Clinton Yates, everybody, with us here on The Hoffman Show. That sports bubble conversation is one that I would like to continue to have it's not going to happen in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be something that's gradual over time. Like, I don't think there's going to be a housing bubble situation where like it literally pops and then all of a sudden the entire sports infrastructure world like crashes. But like maybe like an Evan Novi Williams, our guy from Sportico, would be a good guest on that. I think getting Andy Zimbalist, the economist we had last week, back on the show, he could be an interesting person. I don't know who the right person is, because in many ways, and like I honestly, it's something that I would just love to like dedicate a show to sometime in the off season and be like, we're gonna take calls on this, we're gonna have expert guests, we're gonna have conversations amongst ourselves, bring in other hosts, things like that. Someone like Sheehan, I think would be pretty fascinating. Someone who's gone to so many games, whether it's Terps games, Wizards games, Washington football games over the years. Like Grant would be really fascinating. Grant's someone who's been a fan of these teams forever and goes to games and is going to games with an expanded family now. Like, what's it like going with a family? He had 3, now he's got a family of 4. I think he's just had another one. So, when you got multiple kids, like that hypothetical, what does it cost to go to a game for a family of 4? I would like to know and how that's evolved over the course of years. And at what point do people just go, like, I'm out on this? And this is the thing that, like, Leonsis needs to understand. And if I was advising him, I'd be like, yo, Ted, listen to me on this. Every piece of friction you add for people going to games, and for basically everyone who doesn't live in Alexandria, it got harder to go to games, unless you live south of Alexandria, right? So if you're in Fredericksburg or you're like way south, not the base of the Wizards fan base by any stretch, yes, it is easier for you to go to games starting in 2028, presuming this all gets to the finish line. But if you live on the I-66 corridor, it ain't that much easier to get to Alexandria, if it's even easier at all, than it is to get to D.C. As someone who used to live in Reston, the 267 corridor, I don't think it's easier to get to Alexandria. I hate crossing that bridge. And I'd rather just, at that point, go into D.C. And maybe it's a little easier depending on the day, but I don't know. With game traffic, that's going to be a nightmare. Obviously, everyone in Maryland, everyone in D.C., it's way harder. Anyone who's trying to get there on public transportation, you've added layers and barriers for people to get there. And they are thus less likely to actually make the effort to get there. And that seems like a really relevant piece of information versus just, we got a bunch of money from Virginia and we got a bunch of space out here. It's like, okay, for what? Because eventually you're going to have to make that stuff, because they got a bunch of money, but they didn't get all of it. You got to make it back. And also, people in Virginia are going to want you to make it back. There was Clinton sent me this. I forgot to bring it up with him. But, on the Virginia side of this, there was a state legislator who tweeted the other day that was basically like, if you think I'm going to approve more money for an arena in Northern Virginia before toll relief and schools in Hampton Roads, that, where she is representing down in the 757, you must think I have dumbass written on my forehead. I don't think the state legislator has dumbass written on her forehead, and I think that she probably has a lot of colleagues who feel the same way. We'll talk about more on the D.C. angle of this specifically with Martenzie Johnson. Wrote a really interesting piece for Anscape coming up at 6 o'clock. Next, though, back to the football team and more conversation about Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy's fit together as part of Take Command. That will be Not My Beat on this Wednesday. It's the Hoffman Show, hour 2 of 3 today. Yes, 3 full hours on this Wednesday, which is only right because we only have a half hour for you tomorrow. College basketball here on the Team 980, then back for a full show on Friday. Hope everyone's having a great week as we gear up, obviously, for Christmas on Monday. Holiday season well underway. The weather finally to match. Frigid cold this morning. Terrible. Apropos of none of that, Logan Paulson and I are still doing the Take Command podcast. What a non sequitur that was, Anthony. Just a total pew left turn. Radio professional. I should have just let it happen. Instead, I've stopped down and called attention to it.
It happens like that sometimes, though. You know?
Sometimes it'd be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we do the podcast, and sometimes we play it for you. And when we do it at 5 o'clock, it's technically considered
today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Yes. The main story this week has been Sam Howell's seeming regression and what relationship that has to the way Eric Bieniemy has designed things here in Washington. So that was the subject of our conversation on the podcast, and you're going to hear like half of what we did, which is, kind of how this works. If you want the full conversation, you have to listen to the full podcast. We also broke down the defense at the end of the most recent Film Breakdown podcast as well. But here's part of our conversation about Bieniemy, how this Commanders offense and why it has all gone so terribly wrong as of late.
Right. And so, I'm glad you brought that up because I had an interaction. I think it was a YouTube comment. It might have been someone on Twitter yesterday where they were like, you can't unleverage the quarterback, basically. Where it was like, every system is quarterback centric. Like, you eventually have to play NFL quarterback. And I was like, yes, but there are ways to make it easier. And I, of course, used a Kyle example because I think it's the best one in the league right now. It was like, how do you take the guy who was Mr. Irrelevant and make him into an MVP candidate? And the answer is not like he doesn't actually do anything. It's Kyle understands that Brock Purdy is extremely smart. And that's why he wanted him, by the way, in the draft. It wasn't an accident they drafted him. And so they put a ton on him mentally. Lots of formations, lots of motions. There's all these different personnel groupings. It's like, hey, man, you're going to have to study your ass off. But after the ball's snapped, it's going to be easy for you because we're going to use all this stuff to make it easier physically, even though there's a ton to do mentally. And I feel like that's the area where this system and the way it's designed. And by the way, there's also personnel discussion to be had here in terms of it, the way that the Eagles have made things easier for Jalen Hurts over the last couple of years is their offensive line's incredible. So he doesn't necessarily have to worry about pressure ever. Right. So there's different ways to go about it. But for the play calling, like schematic type of stuff, they have simplified this offense to the point that it is over simple. It's like, that's actually not training wheels. It actually is harder, where it's like Aaron Rodgers could run this system because he sees through everything. Right. Rodgers notoriously just doesn't want a lot of motion, doesn't want a lot of stuff. He's like, let's line up and play football because I'm better at playing football than they are. Right. And at this point in his career, Sam Howell can't say that. And most quarterbacks can never say that. So do you actually give him more in order to make it easier on him? That is the kind of the question that I've had all year, and they have not ever been able to take that next step, and thus Sam is kind of staying where he's at, and the production is falling off because defenses seemingly have known that for weeks.
Yeah, and so I think San Fran is like an interesting example because I think there is some truth to what you're saying, but also Brock Purdy's playing pretty good football right now.
Yeah,
like
Brock's playing great football.
It's like he's elevating. I think 70% of the time Kyle's elevating, and then that 30% he's elevating. But I think another example, like to your point, I think that's a good example. But I can hear people.
Detroit to me is my favorite example because
Detroit,
Goff
Seattle is doing that. Cleveland with Joe Flacco. Like there are teams, and when you watch those games, like what they do in terms of deleveraging, right? Like the term game manager, I think is thrown out like in a negative way, but I think it speaks to what this commenter is saying is you got to play NFL quarterback at some point. I don't have to play NFL quarterback all the time. Like when I think about hard situations for quarterbacks, it's like we're in the gun. It's 3rd and 7. I got a deal. How do I manage those situations to make them easier? And so like you mentioned the Kyle example, like I think about how they scheme stuff open and how they use play action pass to help guys out. So just as an example, right? Hard play action, right? We talked about this, and I think EB did this in the game. Like there's examples of this, but like let's talk about that. Hard play action pass look, right? Those linebackers step up. There's a big void there. But how do we ensure that the corner's not going to get in the way, right? We're going to run Deebo Samuel on a go, and he's going to carry. And then George Kittle's going to run across the formation and be wide open with nobody around him. How many times have we watched a highlight of George just wide open in space? It's because
he's George Kittle. Don't you know that he's important? Cover him, but you can't because you're covering everybody else.
It's because they've taken time and they've schemed stuff up, and Brock Purdy knows it. He feels comfortable with it. And so, for example, like on that dig to Terry, that's a good schemed up touch there. Like that should be an easy completion for Terry. But Sam, and this is something that someone I was talking to mentioned to me, and this is something you have to talk to Sam about, is you mentioned that he has not been super efficient from a play action pass standpoint. And one of the things I wonder about is how well he can see it from a play action pass standpoint. So like the throw's open, it's there. The window that EB has created with the pen is there. It's just there's a little bit of pressure. He gets a little bit spooked and the ball's not out. So even though with the pen you seemingly elevated, the result isn't there. And so getting back to the leverage thing, it's like, how do you find opportunities to just limit those big time moments in the game? Like I think Seattle does a great job because they're super efficient at running the football, right? They've a lot of tight ends in the field. They're physical. It's like this exotic smash mouth thing that Detroit does where they're motioning tight ends around. They're moving guys around the formation. They're changing strength all the time. And they're putting defense in a blender, and they're really efficient running the football. Like they've deleveraged Drew Lock. They've deleveraged Geno Smith through that element of the game. It doesn't need to be through the run game, but it is a feature of it, right? I look at Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams. Like they rush for, what was it, 125 yards or something like that?
It was more than that, yeah.
And what they do, man, it's brilliant. It's just like, but those little wrinkles in the run game deleverage Matthew Stafford. Like Matthew Stafford can deal. There's no doubt about it. But he doesn't need to deal every single play because I don't want to put all my eggs in the quarterback basket. And so even though Matthew Stafford's playing some of the best football in the NFL at the quarterback position right now, Sean McVay understands that, hey, we got to take something off of him. And it's not just off of him, it's off the offensive line as well. So I think that's kind of like what we're alluding to here is just there are ways to say to put him in a better spot. Like I like the example you gave, like where he's riding the bike himself, right? But you're right there with him holding the seat. I think that's exactly what you're saying. The training wheels aren't on because we want to run NFL offense. We want to do what we need to do. But I am helping you as much as you need to make sure this thing stays upright and we're going in the right direction.
Right. And so, but there also does get to a point in defense of Eric and in, if you want to call it criticism of Sam, where like eventually you got to do it. Right. And this is where, and it might not be even a criticism of Sam. Like, I mean, this is Tavita Pritchard's first time as an NFL quarterbacks coach. Like, who knows what kind of, how the process has gone. Like, I'm just naming names to say, like, we don't know where the blame actually goes. Right. But from a like identifying the process standpoint, watching the film standpoint, like, why aren't Sam's eyes going to that backside safety to double check that he doesn't need to throw the go to Terry before getting to the front side concept? Did Sam forget that that's what he's supposed to do because he's focused on the front side concept? Did they teach him, like, hey, man, just focus on this front side concept? It's too, like, we don't want to cloud your brain with that backside safety and you miss an opportunity because that's the way it's coached? Are they not focusing enough on, like, how he moves his eyes? Like, does Sam not have, like, that global understanding that, like, hey, I have to check this first? Or did he just miss it? Like, there's almost an infinite amount of possibilities of why this stuff is happening. But I think it's very clear that there isn't that, like, really high level understanding. And there's been, I think, I'm trying to think of the word. There's just like a lack of cohesion, I think is the best way to phrase it, between Sam and this offense, which is not to blame Sam or the offense. It's just a fact. Like, they haven't fit together very well. I think part of that too is going back to some of the things that he really needed to work on coming into the season, footwork and timing. This is a footwork and timing offense. And you've got a quarterback who, like, I watch him take the snap sometimes and he kind of like freezes and then he rushes the drop back. And you're like, that's not how that is supposed to look. And you watch Jacoby take his drop backs and it's like smoothly catch the snap, boom, 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 back foot hits, ball is out, or hitch, ball is out. but like there is a rhythm to his eyes and his feet and the offense, and everything is married together. And I don't see that cohesion, to use that word again, with Sam. And the why is, I mean, it's important for them to know. I just think it's kind of impossible for us to know unless you've actually unlocked the answers. And now I've just rambled far too long.
No.
You've been sitting here with the knowledge the whole time.
No. But I do think that you mentioned the rhythm and timing, like that's a big part of it, and that's really hard to coach because it's like a feel, and I think in the NFL that rhythm and timing becomes so much more important because everything, like you said, is kind of operating in such like the margin for error is so small. So if my feet are too fast and I'm waiting to throw, then my clock goes off and the receiver's not even in a position where he can catch the football. If I'm too slow, the receiver's open and I'm still holding on to the football. And then I think, when you watch Jacoby, just the rhythm that he, like you mentioned the rhythm. I'm in my drop, there's a rhythm. I've hitched in the same rhythm as the receivers coming out, right? And it wasn't like Jacoby was perfect. There was one time where he was trying to like work an attack concept and the tight end's over the ball, and he's trying to hold the hook player by looking at Curtis, and the hook player squeezes to Logan. It's not there, and he kind of double clutches to Logan, but gets back to Curtis. Like that's the O-line wins that down for him, because it's even though his rhythm and timing was off. So I'm not saying like Jacoby was perfect, but
sure,
that's something that you can tell at the moment Sam's having a hard time with. And I think the thing that's hard to like in the evaluation of Sam, because that's really what this conversation's about, is there are some things he's struggling with. There are some things all young quarterbacks struggle with. The thing that still gets me excited about Sam is his playmaking ability. Like we just mentioned that he misses the dig, to Terry, but he scrambles for a first down. So even though that's a bad play, like it's like kind of a minus, like he was able to elevate that and keep the offense on the field, right? There's the 3rd and 15 where he scrambles for 12 or 13 yards and gets you to a 4th and 2, right? We talked about the mesh concept where, the back's running wide open. And I'm as a coach, I'm a little frustrated with that because of how I've set that
the 4th down that he winds up scrambling and converts to Terry. Jonathan Williams is buck naked open, so open for a touchdown on a wheel route, but he makes a ridiculous play to Terry to convert a 4th down. How mad can you be?
Yeah. And so I think like what I would say is if I'm coaching this, I'm like, good job making the play. But just remember in this look with the back offset to your right and 53 in the A gap, and they're in man coverage here because you can tell it's man coverage. He has to cover him. So when he doesn't leave with the back, I'm alerting that in my mind, right? Because that's the person that's going to match him. And so he's trying to hold a disguise. They don't get it communicated. It's essentially a coverage bust, right? Because as that linebacker is trying to late get to match the back, he gets picked by Logan Thomas. He gets picked by Curtis Samuel, and he's wide open. So as a coach, I'm saying, hey, man, great job making this play, but I think you made it a little too hard on yourself. Just pre-snap, like what's your pre-snap read? And I think this is something that's really hard. The pre-snap stuff now in the NFL is harder than ever. Like, even in me talking about the coverages, I'm like, looks like 6, could be man, maybe a match. You sent me your
notes. There's a lot of question marks on the coverage. And that's what happens with zone match. And like Raheem Morris is one of the best guys in the league at coaching this stuff up, the Rams defensive coordinator. And it looks messy because it starts as one thing and kind of morphs into something else. It's really hard, which makes the rules of like, if it's 6 throw here, if it's 3 throw here, right, you don't know what it is. And that, I would, again, and anybody who's newer to the podcast, if you want to hear more about this, go back to the summer in our archive and or just search the Matt Ryan podcast, because Matt talked about this, of how hard it became by the end of his career to read coverage, and you kind of had to start reading space. And there were times that he made great plays having no idea what coverage he just threw into.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that gets me is like, can you ensure the space as a coordinator, right, to help him out, right? I think it's what we're ultimately getting at is, can you help him with that process as opposed to just being like, hey, man, we're going to pre-snap read this, and you're going to have to figure it out. So back to the Sam thing, there are those plays. The touchdown, I think, is a great play design. The one to is it to Curtis?
It's Curtis, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great play design. It's curl, so you're going to run out, you're going to run like a curl route. Everyone knows a curl button hook, maybe some people call it. 12 yards sit. The cover 3 player is going to attach to that. You're going to inside stem, and you're going to run a deep corner, and you're running a corner on a safety, and it's wide open. And I love that play. It's a great play call, great situation, great understanding by EB. But talk about ensuring space. Like it's an easy read. Like second that guy attaches to the button hook, to the curl, I know I'm throwing the pylon. Like there's nobody out there to cover it. So I just love that opportunity. And again, Sam does that stuff pretty consistently, but there were times definitely where you're like, he doesn't know the coverage. He's a little bit rattled. He's leaving clean pockets. And that's the thing that you're dealing with, because I do think you see the potential. And I think, we always make the Jalen Hurts comparison. There were times watching Jalen Hurts where I thought this is a non-tenable solution. It's a non-tenable solution for him playing NFL quarterback. He's throwing 3 picks. Nothing's on schedule. He's running into sacks. But he got better. And I think you've seen enough of Sam being Sam in terms of arm talent, because his arm talent, in my opinion, is way better than Jalen Hurts. His release is way better. And you've seen the competitive moxie that he brings. So, year 2 development. And so that's where everyone talks about, oh, do we need to draft a quarterback? Do we need to make a move in free agency? I think you're probably okay. This game doesn't, after watching the All-22, doesn't get me off of him just yet. I think there's enough there. But I think it's kind of to your point. It's like, he
needs a much more quarterback-friendly system and environment, right? It's not just a system. It's not just a coordinator thing. It's like he needs an elite offensive line. He probably needs a great tight end to throw to. Those things helped Jalen as much as anything.
Well, I think, even looking at Drew Lock, watch that game last night, and in crunch time, it's I've got guys that are better than your guys, and we're going to win. DK Metcalf's going to make a great play here. And we got Jackson Smith and Jigba making a huge play, winning a man-to-man situation. And I think Terry has that ability. I think Jahan's had that ability, but maximizing those guys in this offense is also something, you'd like to see a little bit more of, or maybe featuring them a little bit more. Cause I think the offense has given them opportunities, and Sam has not always hit on those opportunities. And again, that's in every offense. That's not just this offense with Sam. That happens frequently as the quarterbacks miss stuff. They're not on the same page with the receivers. It is a new offense, but yeah, so I think it hasn't got me off him yet, but I do think it shows you that he's a work in progress. He's a developmental piece. And, again, I think he's got it, but you're going to have to deal with some growing pains with it.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, or one of the things that Jalen has on Sam is accuracy. He was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the country in college at both Alabama and at Oklahoma. And he carried that, wasn't always going the right place, whatever, but his accuracy has always been a huge boon for him. And Sam, that has been an issue at times. So I think the footwork, the accuracy are 2 of the biggest questions about how coming out of college. Those things are still question marks right now. He's still a young player. He's growing, and we'll see based off how he performs in these final 3 games and what the next regime wants to do, whether that's enough to be the quarterback in 2024. Anything else on the offense we want to get to before we quickly buzz through the defense?
No, unless there's other plays you want to go over, but I think that's good.
No, we can talk later in the week about the offensive line and some of that kind of stuff. But I think that was the most 30 minutes of quarterback talk is exactly what the people ordered here on.
If you want that buzz through of the defense, or you want the first part of that conversation, which was a little more specific to the Rams game itself, make sure you check out the Take Command podcast wherever you get your pods. That's Apple Podcasts. That's Spotify. That's the free Odyssey app. That is Amazon Music, or you can watch it on YouTube. Clips on my page at Craig Hoffman, full episodes at 1067 The Fan. And don't forget, the Take Command pregame show will be on this Sunday. Logan out, Linnell in. So see what Linnell's like before a game as opposed to just experiencing what he's like during and after on the in-game show and the post-game. I don't think there's an in-game show this weekend, just the way the schedule's working out with the holiday and everything. But Doc and Linnell will have your post-game. But Linnell and I will be live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, starting at 10 a.m. on your radio. You can join us in person starting at 11. YouTube-wise, we stream that show as well, which I mentioned just to say you can comment on any of our YouTube videos at Craig Hoffman or at the Team 980, and we might just read your comment live on the radio. It's a little segment we call Never Read the Comments, and that is what we are doing because it'll be 5:30 on a Wednesday next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope everyone is having a great Wednesday afternoon. Oh, Anthony, the do-rag came off. The waves look fantastic.
Thank you, man. Thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome. It's the holiday season. I'm in the spirit of giving compliments, and giving people the business on the internet. It is time for Never Read the Comments.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
All right, here's how this works if you are new to the program. We put highlights of our show on YouTube. It is at Craig Hoffman. That is where you find us. We also put many of those same highlights at the Team 980, where we stream this entire show live each and every day. Then we comb through as many of the comments as we can. Some weeks, like this week, it's hard to get to them all, but I read almost every comment. I truly do. I don't respond to all of them because I have a life, and it would take an immense amount of time. But we pick the very best ones, the most thought-provoking. We collect them, and then we respond to them, not just on YouTube, but live on the radio, which is what you're listening to or watching right now. Let's start with Richard Allen 4912, who is responding to some of our conversation around Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell yesterday. And he says, you're saying EB called plays for Howell like he was an all-pro QB? What if they ran the ball 20 times more a game and ended up with 3rd and long more often because they have no O-line? How does that help Sam? You're assuming EB had the tools in his box to make it work better than it did. Maybe Sam is a flashy QB who won't pan out. Who knew that 6 weeks ago? That what-if game is never ending. Anyone can look back and say it didn't work, but it's arrogant to say these things should have been done 5 weeks ago. I think evaluating EB with what he had to work with, including a horrible defense, is nearly impossible at this point. EB's interview next year on what needs to happen next will reveal how perceptive he is moving forward. I think this is an interesting comment for a few reasons. One is there's a couple of comments that just assumed that I don't know. I'm very happy that our subscriber numbers are going up and new people are finding our radio show and my YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff on the regular. But when they were winning earlier in the year, remember that? When they were winning, I said I didn't like what they were doing with Sam Howell, dropping him back so much. I said it was a formula for disaster then, and it has just proven to be exactly right. That it is actually not good for winning football games, and it is certainly not good for his development. The idea that, he'll see a bunch of stuff. Okay. All he's doing is running into a brick wall as fast as he can a bunch, but sure, I'm sure that's great for morale, great for development. It's not. It's just not. And I think that is a really important thing to point out is like, this isn't hindsight. This isn't with the benefit of 2020. Some of the details have more clarity now, but on a big picture, yes, I have been saying all along, I didn't like this and I don't think it's correct. So that's thing one. Don't come for me like I'm new here. I'm not new here. Two, I think more importantly to not make it so much about me because I kind of hate that. To the point itself. One, if you leave a comment or you are screaming at your radio or you call in and you tell me they're bad at running the football, just admit you don't know what you're talking about. It's easier. We skip a step. The Washington Commanders in 2023 are the 7th ranked team in the NFL in yards per carry. They're averaging 4.6 yards a carry and have been for weeks. They have been, yes, at times, in certain situations, bad, but in many other situations, very good. They have busted out some long runs this year. They have gotten explosive plays in the run game. They have gotten enough to keep that average high when they haven't had explosive plays. Yes, short yardage has been a mess, but to say, we can't run in short yardage versus we can't run period are two very different things. Because one, a defense is geared up for, and the other, you're taking advantage of the fact that a defense is playing you a certain way. So I'm not asking them to go 60-40 run. I've said this a million times this season. Just run it a little bit more. And if you want to say like, oh, but they're not super efficient, whatever, believe it or not, that's not a defense. If you think they can run the football better, that's actually an indictment of how bad their run game design is. They've run it well in spite of not really looking to maximize that part of their offense based off how they scheme and based off how they spend their practice time. And yet they're still the 7th best offense in the league rushing the football based on yards per carry. So, again, big picture, young quarterback, mediocre offensive line as pass blockers, offensive line that in many ways is built to run the football. Let's let them run it. That makes sense. It's a cohesive strategy. What they've done, not. And I just don't understand, frankly, how someone could disagree with that, but there's a lot of things in this world I don't understand. Evie moving forward, somewhere else. I think there's a lot of places I would hire him. I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's stupid. I just think he's a bad fit with a young quarterback. Blah 0007 says it's pretty hard to extrapolate from 10 passes in a situation where the Rams were trying to limit damage. It's easier to look at history, of course, talking about Jacoby Brissett. A bunch of these comparisons are to QBs, Goff, Hurts, Dak, Kirk, that were afforded multi-year development processes. They all had hard patches. I really appreciate this comment. One, I would say that I think, Anthony, we've done a pretty good job this week. We haven't really talked about Brissett that much. Like, if you were lazy in this chair, you would spend this entire week stirring up a quarterback controversy between Brissett and Howell. And I've kind of shot that down at every turn. It's like, even if you want to say, oh, well, they would have been better this year, I'd be like, yeah, but it's not actually, like, for what? Let's pretend they would have won another game or two. It would have been nice for me, potentially, if they could get across that 6.5 threshold. Because your boy was dumb enough to put $20 down. It was $20. Who cares? $20 down in Vegas when I was out there in the summer because I thought that was stealing money at 6.5. Anytime you feel like you're stealing money, you're probably getting robbed. That's how sports betting goes. But at the end of the day, like, it's not really about Jacoby or anything because exactly that. It's 10 snaps or 10 throws against different coverages, 4-man rush, no Aaron Donald. Some of those are in the red zone from the 1-yard line, and they weren't successful, etc. As for the more important point, I think, though, when you're comparing a guy like Howell, people will want to make the Mahomes comparison because of EB, and I get that, but I think that's very silly. Like, Patrick Mahomes is a one-of-a-kind player in NFL history with what he does. His combination of skills and intellect and improvisation and everything he's one of one. He might go down as the best quarterback to ever play the position. Straight up. You shouldn't compare him to that guy. But what about later round picks who took some years to develop, were given opportunities, were incubated and insulated, right? They were put in a position where they didn't have to do too much, and they've eventually grown into being able to do more. That's what I think Sam could be. If Sam's going to succeed, he's got to be that guy. And that's where I do think you look at some of the really rough stretches that Dak had. Not the fake ones that media blew up because he had one bad game and he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But genuine, like, real tough stretches, Dak has had some. Kirk had many, especially very early, like prior to 2015. But even, in 2015, 16, 17 here, there were some 2-3 game stretches where he wasn't very good. And he obviously was really terrible in some very big spots. Maybe the worst game he ever played in Washington was the playoff game in 2015, January of 2016, against the Packers. He was awful. But that doesn't mean that Kirk Cousins hasn't had an exceptional career, especially for a 4th-round pick. Russell Wilson. Like, Russ cooked early, but he didn't have to do a whole lot. He had an amazing defense and a great run game, and he thrived off of play action. Like, they found a way that Russell could be effective from day one. If Russell goes into a system like the one here, I don't think he has a very good career. And so that's the struggle that the next GM is going to have is what's our system? And not even our system. Because that's implying just like purely scheme, right? You're running a West Coast this or whatever that. It's not really what I'm talking about. What is our ecosystem? How's our line? How do we want to play? What skill positions, what linemen, what tight ends do we have? How is our defense? What is the demand going to be on our offense? Those are the questions I'm trying to ask if I'm trying to figure out if Sam Howell can be my starting quarterback and I can win with him. Because what the Cowboys did with Dak and how they built their defense and their skill positions and their line has been a huge priority for them since before Dak was the quarterback. When Romo was there, it was the same thing. When what they built around Kirk, what they were trying to build around Kirk here, and then ultimately in Minnesota, what they have built around him, getting him a guy like a Justin Jefferson. What Jared Goff has succeeded with first in LA, where he did make a Super Bowl, and then now in Detroit, where he's been really fantastic, especially the last 2 years. There's conscious decisions to surround them with stuff. And that's going to also involve letting those guys work through some of the rough patches. So I like that comment from Blah-de-blah 0007 a lot. Never read the comments here on the Hoffman Show. Chaos Nux says, it's a great screen. That might be one of my favorite things about these mailbags, about the never read the comments, and is the screen names occasionally are just Chaos Nux, which I assume is like Knuckles. I just imagine like that's a hockey goon who now plays beer league hockey and beats people up. Chaos Nux.
You never know who you might come across in the comments.
You want to know who I don't want to come across in a wrong way?
This guy.
Yeah, Chaos Nux. That's who. All right, Chaos Nux says, oh man, these comments. I bet a ton of these people haven't even attempted to become elite at something. You're going to have these moments where you hit walls. Happens to everyone, doesn't stop. Sometimes you just need to step away and slow down. Things are going to take time to reach the next level sometimes. I think that's 100% true. And, whether Sam becomes elite or not, we'll see. But this is why I didn't mind. People I've heard crushing Rivera for benching him. And it's like, well, if you were going to bench him in the Buffalo game was early. Like, letting him play through some adversity, seeing if he could turn it around. And Sam was doing a lot of, good stuff in that game in between all of the bad stuff. It was much more roller coaster versus Saturday or Sunday was pretty flatline against the Rams. A flatline of bad. Wasn't seeing the field well. It wasn't like he was under pressure. Like, he was patting the ball. He's seeing ghosts. He's vacating clean pockets. You're just like, what are you? I think we need to old N64 turn this thing off, blow on the cartridge, and plug it back in. Like, we gotta start over. So, hey, we're gonna pull you. We're gonna let you take a breath. I like that. I actually thought that was the right move, and I have no problem with them going back to him, obviously, for the rest of the season. Why not? 3386 says, Craig, my issue is when you say do more, I'm like, what the hell do you want Eric Bieniemy to do if the QB can't do the basics of an NFL quarterback? You say motion, bunch, all that, throw more at him, and he's not making the play. Motion is to help him diagnose coverages, and he still isn't making the read. Take the Jonathan Williams play, the wheel route that we talked about a bunch this week. It's cover one. It's not cover one. Actually, no, it might have been cover one. It's man-to-man, which if they have one deep safety, it would be cover one. Anyway, the linebacker is trailing behind in motion, automatically signaling we got a beater, and it's the wheel, and it doesn't happen. Sam does nothing at an elite level to threaten the defense. Sam isn't Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, to which you can threaten the run heavily. So when you say do more and curate to his skills, I ask, what the hell is his top skill at an elite level? Good question. Fair question. I've thought about this too, where there are times where I'm just like, man, if I'm EB staring at that play sheet, I don't feel like I got a lot of stuff that I feel great about. And that's not a great feeling as a play caller, I'd imagine. But I think Sam does have elite arm talent. I think Sam actually is a pretty elite playmaker off schedule. The problems are on schedule. And it's ultimately Eric's job to find the things that he likes and to be able to continuously get to them. And so they've done a lot of similar stuff out of similar formations, out of similar everything all year, and defenses have latched on. And that's a problem. And then, again, is there times where they have given him some of that stuff and he still misses it? Yeah. That's a great example. And that's why it's not all on Eric. I've never said it's all on Eric. I've said it's a bad match. And I wish there are things Eric, as the coordinator, as the adult in the room, if you will, would do. And I would start the blame there. But there is a chance that we look back in hindsight and are like, yeah, Sam actually just wasn't that good. And there was nothing Eric could have done. Sure, fine. But you watch how leveraged Sam is. You watch how much is on his plate. You watch how often he's asked to drop back and read defenses, and that is not going to work with him, especially at this point in his career. So whether it's more of the sprint rollout, which they do, but not with the amount of frequency that they could, whether it's more true play action from under center, although there are times that Sam hasn't read that out particularly well, whether it's finding a run game with Sam. Is he Lamar or Josh Allen? No. Or Jalen? No. But those are the three best running quarterbacks probably in the league. He's a good runner. I would have run him more the entire year. Or again, they do average 4.6 yards a carry. You're allowed to rush the football with your running backs. The screen game has not been a huge part of this offense this year in a way that I thought it would. And I do think there's probably some things that EB doesn't feel confident in because he doesn't trust the staff to coach it. And I think that's become more of a storyline as we've thought deeper and, whatever over the last month, the realization that this is not the staff that EB probably would have put together if he could have maximized it last offseason. Between money and timing, he wasn't able to. But at the end of the day, that's their jobs. And so you either have two options. You can do this, and this would be my, the simpler response to this question is, or what? This 4-10 hasn't broken 200 yards in a couple of weeks. This is just dude. No, you got to find a better solution, or you lose, and they've lost. Lou Google 5530 says, "Thanks for the intelligent discussion that of necessity leads nowhere." This was our discussion, our being mine and Linnell yesterday on Overreaction Tuesday. It says, "Thanks for the intelligent discussion that of necessity leads nowhere. One hopes that Sam Howell will take a good look at what he has been doing on the field and make some changes before the end of the season. One reason to give Jacoby a chance if Howell's decline continues is for the sake of the other players on the team who deserve a chance to win." I thought about this with Jacoby, obviously a little bit, but I do think that if Sam is bad, I'm talking real bad, benchable bad, the next two games, I just start Jacoby in the finale. I'd be like, you know what, Jacoby, you've been a good soldier. We're gonna honor you with a game on the way out. Because at that point, who cares? One more game of tape? No, Sam has shown you what he's shown you. One more game of experience? No, let's just reset next year. And it doesn't mean that you're 100% out on Sam. Obviously, it's not great, but that's not the staff's problem. And really, if the new folks come in, I don't think that one game against Dallas is going to mean anything, which is hilarious because last year's one game against Dallas at the end of the season kind of meant everything. So we'll see, but I do think that there is something to that. But then again, if there's nothing to play for in the last game of the season, your Terrys, your Jahans, etc., might not even be playing. You might just say, if you bench Sam and bench a bunch of other folks, you give Jacoby a game, and Jacoby might be out there throwing to Bryson Tremaine, who is still in the practice squad. In case you're like, Bryson Tremaine? Yeah, call up some young guys. Mitchell Tinsley. Your time, kid. This was Anthony, I think we're going to wrap up with one of my favorite things, which is when one commenter responds to another commenter. And we have an intra-comments, never read the comments moment, if you will. So, first we have a comment left by Andy Sawyer, 647. God forbid I mess up the numbers on Andy's username. Andy Sawyer, 647. And this was in response to our video of, have Commanders fans lost faith in Sam Howell, a.k.a. yesterday's Vibe Check Tuesday. And Andy goes, yes, because of his resume and his actual words. There are not two-time Super Bowl winning OCs because even the best ones get 1 to 3 years as an offensive coordinator. He had 5 and was in his system. Of course, now they're talking about Bieniemy. He had 5 and was in his system for 10 years. He has MJD, Tyreek, Travis. Oh, and sorry, actually, this was in response to is there anything Eric Bieniemy can do to keep his job next year? So picking up, there are not people with his resume. There's the resume. He had 5 as an OC in the system for 10 years. He has MJD, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes, and Adrian Peterson vouching for his ability. He literally said, I will only run with the guys who could run, and I'm looking forward to a challenge. By any standard, he is the most qualified OC to head coach in the NFL. I know people are going to mention Ben Johnson, but just because you're hot has no bearing on what you will do in the future, as people are currently arguing with EB. My question is, why does EB not get the grace of being in his first year here? Thought-provoking for sure. It's a question that I've thought about quite a bit, and it's something that before the season, I kind of went on the EB rant. Like, it's ridiculous that this man has to come here and quote-unquote prove himself. But I've now seen it for a year up close without Patrick Mahomes, and some of my thoughts on him have changed. And Raymond Smith 2040 says, so he was calling the offense in KC before or not? I'm confused. Either way, that's not the point Craig or anybody else who's actually thinking about this critically is saying. His offensive philosophy is the complete opposite of how you're supposed to treat a first-year starting QB. If Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy were in Sam's situation, they'd be struggling just as much as him. Why? Because EB's philosophy doesn't help a young QB, and by extension, doesn't lead to winning games. I just hope EB hasn't completely ruined the kid. And I thank Raymond Smith a lot for making a point that I should have made a long time ago for clarity, which is, if Jalen Hurts had been the Commanders' quarterback this year, Jalen Hurts never wins an MVP. Jalen Hurts doesn't do that much differently, frankly, than Sam Howell has done this year. Now, do I think Jalen Hurts is a better player? Yes, Jalen was a second-round pick for a reason, a Heisman Trophy winner for a reason, and Sam is Sam. Very talented, potentially still a very good quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to win an MVP. So the ceiling was there with Jalen in a way that it's not for Sam. But I do think that when you're talking about the way that Jalen was able to work into the league and figure some things out as a young player, he was buttressed by a great offensive line, great skill position guys, great scheme that was very quarterback friendly, played to his strengths. He ran, he was a great runner that they used that skill set of his. All of that stuff helps him not be as leveraged as Sam Howell has been. Brock Purdy is in the perfect situation. They asked Brock to do a lot, but it's a lot that he's capable of. Sam is being asked to do stuff he's not capable of. And Eric's kind of philosophy is like, this is how it goes. You got to have more ways to do it. You got to find ways to figure out what your quarterback does well, what he doesn't, and bring him along so that list of things that he doesn't shrinks. And unfortunately, that just hasn't happened this year. And I think a different philosophy designed around deleveraging the quarterback and around making sure that your best players get the football, that would have been a better strategy. And it's, for instance, what they do in Detroit with Ben Johnson. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets the ball all the time. Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted, and it was a good pick by them, even though he was overdrafted, because they get him the ball, and they make it worth it. Meanwhile, you got Terry making a bunch of money. Jahan is a first-rounder, silent all year. So it's not that EB's terrible. He's interviewed for a lot of jobs. Do I think a lot of that was BS? People needed to interview a minority candidate to satisfy the Rooney Rule, and they yanked EB around? Yeah, I do. But there's a lot of jobs where he went in with a legitimate shot, and for whatever reason, owners were like, no. And some of those might have been, reasons that had nothing to do with football that were ridiculous. Some of them might have been like, I don't know if this guy's got the flexibility to be a head coach. And that, to me, is the biggest question about Eric moving forward, is like, do you have the flexibility to work in different situations when you're the guy? Because, yes, he was great in Kansas City, but Andy Reid has a lot to do with that. That was a good marriage. There's a good complementary personalities. And what the philosophy that Eric has taken to under Andy works with Patrick Mahomes. But can you apply that other places? Or can you find a place where that applies? That's the key for Eric and his success in the future. We'll see. Big, giant, we'll see. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That is, never read the comments. Make sure you leave yours at Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980, or if we occasionally also check. I definitely check with regularity. Sometimes we even read them, though. Some of the comments at 1067 The Fan on the full episodes of Take Command. We get back here on the Hoffman Show. We get back to the Wizards' move out of D.C. Martenzie Johnson of Anscape wrote a piece reported from Capital One Arena and talked to a bunch of folks who go to games that don't want to go in Virginia for a variety of reasons. We'll dive into those reasons and why he embarked on this reporting next. The Hoffman Show, the Team 980, always live on YouTube at the Team 980 and streaming on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in just a little bit, our NFL tiers. Normally we do them on Thursdays, but short show tomorrow, so we do them today. But right now, a conversation I'm excited for, one that I've been waiting to have all day after reading his piece this morning on Anscape. Anscape senior writer Martenzie Johnson joins us on the guest line to discuss a piece he did where he went down to Capital One Arena and did this crazy little thing called reporting. We've talked about how the reaction within D.C. and specifically within Black D.C. about the Wizards leaving and how upsetting that is for cultural, social, etc. reasons. And Martenzie went down to Capital One Arena and actually talked to folks at the games around the arena and about this and how they felt about it. And Martenzie joins us now. Martenzie, appreciate the time, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? That welcome to DC. It doesn't have the same ring when you say welcome to Alexandria, Virginia. So they have to update that, I guess.
Yeah, I do wonder. Like, one of the reasons that I feel like this hurts so much for so much of DC is like, as you talk about in the piece, like they take Go-Go and make it the G League team, and you're like, you realize that all that stuff's got to go now, right? Like you can't benefit off the district, and they play that song all the time at Capital One Arena. You can't play that anymore once you go to Alexandria. Like that belongs within the border.
Yeah. Chuck Berry doesn't hit the same in Alexandria, I'm guessing. But yeah, I imagine if this thing goes through, when or if it goes through, they're gonna have to do a little bit of rebranding because, like I said, it just doesn't have the same ring to it when you're doing all of this in Virginia rather than in DC.
So obviously the why you write this piece is, we've been talking about this for a week now. I thought Michael Wilbon was the first guy I kind of heard put it so succinctly on PTI when this news came through. He's just like, you're taking the city game out of the city. and everybody knows exactly what he meant. But like, how did you want to attack writing the story, and how did these conversations go with folks at Capital One Arena, whether it's fans, vendors, etc.?
Yeah. So in no way is this situation unique to DC, right? Like when I first heard this, and I'm a transplant here, and I just started covering the team this year, so I didn't know that this was even in consideration for this amount of time. But so I kind of got caught off guard by it last week, and when I first heard it, all I could think of was Atlanta leaving Atlanta to go to Cobb County. All I could think of was the Warriors leaving Oakland to go to San Francisco, right? Like you build this reputation, you build this culture, you build this community in the cities that you're in. And in the moment that you can go out to the suburbs, the moment that you can get more money from certain places and not the place that you're actually in, that hits people pretty hard, right? And so I was thinking it must be the same in DC in that it feels like it's not just a move, right? It's not just going 4 miles. It's not just going across the Potomac River. Like, you're taking a lot out of this city by moving this team. And so going into it, all I prompted everyone I spoke with was, how do you feel about this move? And then it all just came out, right? And there's this general frustration, right? Like these people, for proximity reasons, for one, like a lot of them work in D.C. or live close by D.C., and like this just adds another 20, 30 minutes to their commute. They can't exactly walk there if they live downtown or work downtown. So it's that, but also you're moving to a place where not all, I only spoke to 6-7 people, so it's like it's not representative sample, but it's enough to know that it's something to it. They don't feel particularly safe going to Virginia. Virginia police don't have the best reputation nationwide or even locally, apparently. So I just went into it, just wanted to ask people how they felt. And like I said, they don't want the team to move. They're conflicted in a way because a lot of them understand that, yeah, D.C. is on hard times right now. COVID has devastated not only D.C. itself, but the Chinatown area where the arena is. So they can understand wanting to chase more money. But overall, I think they will all rather the team stay.
I think the part that is like most shocking to a lot of people reading it is probably the policing part that you reference. And a lot of your piece does reference, obviously, the violent crime that is up in D.C. And a lot of folks you talk to are like, yeah, no, we get it. Like there's some issues that need to be worked through here right now. But how surprising was it to you as someone who's new to the area to learn that actually for the folks that are going to games right now, going to Virginia actually feels less safe to them?
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of surprising because, like, don't get me wrong, I don't think D.C. police got the best reputation either. But
for sure,
it's something about Virginia where it's not just a police thing. Like talking to people, and they're sort of speaking in code or euphemism, so they're not really saying what they mean. But they're like, you know, I just don't go there. There's nothing for me there, mind you. Alexandria has similar things that DC has, but it's like I never go there. Even myself, the only time I ever go to Virginia is to go to Reagan Airport, right? I'm literally leaving by coming there, right? So it doesn't have the best reputation amongst the people that I spoke to. Again, it's not representative, but with the people I spoke to, everyone just kind of, you can see it in their eyes. They like twinged a little when I said the word Virginia. Like it's just seems like such a foreign place, even though, again, it's less than 4 miles from where Capital One is right now.
Martenzie Johnson wrote a fantastic piece in Anscape. Highly recommend reading it, which you can get to. Obviously, you just go to anscape.com or also link through ESPN.com. And he joins us here on the Hoffman Show. As far as the crime in D.C. part of it, what did people say about that reality and who they blame or how temporary or not they feel like that issue is?
Yeah, and I wanted to definitely put that in there because it's a thing, right? I imagine you follow these Twitter accounts that tell you the happenings or the crimes that happen around here. Like there's no denying it, right? This is actually happening. Now, how much influence that actually has on the move, I couldn't tell you, right? Because again, I put in the piece when I was there that day and the other days that I've gone to Wizards games and the other times I've just gone to go to the restaurants and stuff around Gallery Place, it just seemed like people standing around, right? Like there's a guy next to us when I'm talking, Stevie and Bobby Caldwell, right? Like this guy who I'm speaking with is just selling hats. Like it's nothing much really going on, but you know how reputations happen, like that sort of stuff. But I mean, just the conflicting part for me, and maybe some of the people that I spoke with hit on this, is like, can you fix the crime issue by giving $500 million to the Wizards? I don't have an answer for that. Maybe if you give them the money, it revitalizes the area again, mind you, but it revitalizes the area, and then people have more money, and it leads to less crime. I don't know, but the people who wanted to stay, they did identify like, yeah, it's kind of an iffy situation to give public money for it, but again, I don't know how you solve the crime problem, whatever it may be, by giving money elsewhere rather than to the resources that are needed to prevent the crime rather than try and stop the crime when it's already happening.
Right, which for whatever it's worth has been my point all along, is like Leonsis should have stayed, and he's very rich and he can pay for it, but he took $1.6 billion for Virginia, and technically it's his prerogative, but you then get to the question of what is lost. And that when you get to like the cultural element of this, and you're talking to folks who are playing music or selling hats, and like that's just kind of part of going to a Wizards game is like you get off the metro, the go-go's going on trash cans, you got 7 dudes who try to sell you a hat in that half a block you walk to the door. Like that's just part of the experience to me, and it's part of what makes it a unique experience going to Capital One for a Wizards game, even though when you get inside, you've seen mostly a bad basketball team I've been here since 2015. You can do the math. But like when you look at this as a writer and a columnist and a journalist and as someone who's covered things in other places, and you mentioned Atlanta, Cobb County, and Detroit, and what they've done now, actually going back from the suburbs into the city. What's gained, what's lost here through your eyes with this move?
I think you lose a segment of your fan base, your population, right? On one hand, like again, it's just a move a couple of blocks, right? With San Francisco, it's just going over the bridge, but like that's another transportation cost for people to pay for these things. Like ask Warriors fans how much more they're paying for tickets to go to see the Warriors play now compared to a couple of years ago when they were at Oakland, right? So you start to price people out. You literally kind of separate yourself from them, and it becomes, and not to say this is a bad thing, it becomes a wider fan base when it's still the product on the court is black, right? And like I said, you're taking so many people out of this, and it's just from chasing money, right? Like this, like you said, Leonsis could have stayed. He has enough money to buy another team if he wanted to, right? But like he saw an opportunity to have to pay less for this new arena complex, so he took it. But when you're chasing money all the time, sometimes you can be blinded by what's most important to your fan base. They want to see a competitive team, obviously, but they want the atmosphere to feel right. Like for people who live in D.C. or the surrounding areas, they want to have access to it rather than, again, additional metro stop or having to drive a few extra miles or really 30, 40 more minutes, right? So sometimes when we put money first, other people suffer, and we're kind of seeing this here with D.C. because the people seem devastated more than anything else. And the move isn't even for another 5-6 years, but like they just seem genuinely hurt that the Wizards as they know it, the DC-based Wizards, like it's no longer going to exist. Yeah,
for sure. I'm looking up at our YouTube stream right now, and as a comment, Tommy T says people go to Landover, and I would point out to Tommy, no, they don't. Like you go to, I go to Landover for games. There ain't a lot of people in the stands, and there's also a huge difference in 10 times per year for football, including preseason. Especially because they haven't had any playoff games there in a while, and 41 times a year for hockey or basketball in this case. So I think that like the math, I think what's going to be interesting, Martenzi, and I think that we're a couple years away from being able to have some real data on this, studying it with some of these other places that you mentioned, is is there a financial cost? Like, does it wind up being worth it, or is what you lose with the personality and the character of your team, not to mention longtime dedicated fans who don't actually go to the games anymore and stop supporting the team, it doesn't wind up costing you money to chase the short-term dollar?
I mean, I can answer that question now. So in the press conference from last week, the governor of Virginia said this is going to have a $12 billion economic impact on the state. 30,000 jobs are going to be created. There have been countless studies, both in the U.S. and abroad, studying stadium financial deals or public deals, the Olympics, the World Cup. there's big fanfare of, oh, how much money this is going to bring in, how many jobs. But in the end, those numbers are never reached. It never really benefits the area that it's supposed to. Maybe Washington will be first. I don't know. But, like, I think we've seen enough that whatever they're touting as the benefits of this is not going to pan out exactly as they say it will. Rich people will get richer, but I don't know everyone else how they're going to benefit from that.
Right. Does it pay off for Leonsis? Maybe, but he'll probably be the only one if it even pays off for him. Again, Anscape.com is where you can find this piece. Definitely check it out. Martenzi Johnson, senior writer at Anscape. Martenzi, this was great. Hopefully I'll see you around somewhere here in D.C. since you're in town, probably at a Wizards game, and certainly have you back on the show at some point in the future.
No, thank you for having me. And also, welcome to Alexandria. Yeah, see, it doesn't work. Alexandria, Virginia. It doesn't ring the same way, Chris.
Yeah, no. Welcome to Anthony. You'll have to work on a remix over there. A Welcome to Alexandria remix. I don't have a lot of faith in you, and that actually has nothing to do with you over there.
I was about to say I can see who I can contact, but I don't have it right
Maybe
now.
this is the project for Jeff finally.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Put your T out time in his hands, you know. Somebody can make it.
Hey, if you pay people enough, they'll do anything. I think that's actually the lesson here. Tenzi, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that is Martenzi Johnson with us here on the Hoffman Show. A great conversation earlier in the show with Clinton Yates on this topic as well, and kind of a bigger conversation about the sports bubble and who gets rich and who doesn't and all that kind of stuff. Really good stuff with Yates. That'll be up shortly on YouTube as well at Craig Hoffman. We get back, Anthony and I hit our NFL tiers on this Wednesday. Normally do this on Thursday, but since we have a short show tomorrow, we'll do this today, and that'll kind of be the last thing we do. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. The Hoffman Show will be back in 3 minutes. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Again, thanks to Clinton Yates and Martenzie Johnson for joining us today on the show. We got probably no one on the show, if I'm being honest, tomorrow, because the show will be quick. Anthony's not even coming in. Anthony's not even showing up.
I will not be here tomorrow.
No, it's 4 to 4:30 tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not showing up either. I'm doing it from home. I'm not coming in for 30 minutes. Sorry to the bosses. I don't think they'll care.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I'm good on that. It'd take me longer to get here and get home than it would to do the show.
Yep.
Anthony, what should we do on the show tomorrow? We have 30 minutes.
I mean, you have EB.
EB will talk.
Maybe you also have a question revolving around Ron Rivera and his competency. Competency.
You can spell it, you just can't say it.
Yes.
Competency.
Yes. Yeah.
Essig's producing, so there's, I mean, who knows what nonsense we could come up with.
Or maybe, chat with Rooster. I don't know.
I think we should just make Rooster do an extra half hour. We should both get the day off.
I think we should be in favor of all in favor. Say
aye. No one's here to say nay. Boss is on vacation, I think. That or he's about to call in and be like, sir? Or Russell's about to call in and be like, nay. I think I can handle 30 minutes. It'll be fine. So looking forward to that tomorrow, 4 to 4:30. Then we're back with a full show on Friday. But do we bother to try to knock out a tier now, or do we just cram it all into a solid 15 minutes at 6:30? I think we should do that. Did you have your chicken salad?
Yes.
As good as you remember it?
Even better.
Wow.
Was the bread that we had this time the same bread that was used last time?
I think so. We've been pretty consistent on the Dave's Killer bread for a while.
Yeah,
we get the yellow one in case anyone's wondering.
Dave's Killer.
Yeah,
bread?
Dave's Killer bread.
Dave's Killer bread.
Yeah, it's got like some nuts, some seeds.
Yeah.
Good whole grains. It's got a great flavor to it.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Your killer bread. Also, Anthony, I did something today that most of the time is miserable, and it actually didn't suck that bad.
What'd you do?
I went to the DMV.
Oh, you finally got through over there.
Yeah, I did. This has been a bit of an adventure for me this week.
Yep.
So Monday I had stacked up. I was like, I'm going to be productive. Like, this is going to be great. So Monday, my plan was go get a haircut, which I did at 1 o'clock, and that's in Shirlington. And then my drive back over, I would just go to the DMV because the Southwest DC location is right across the street from us here in Southeast. Literally right at the street that it's across is Capitol Street, hence the Southwest Southeast. And I put it in my GPS to go, and it's like closed. And I was like, you muckety muck son of a... Dang it. So then yesterday, I was like, well, I'll just drive and go. So I'm getting ready to leave, and I get a text from the one and only Linnell Willingham, who was initially going to tape his Overreaction Tuesday segment with us sometime in the 3 o'clock range. And instead, he's like, I can be available now. And then he had all kinds of problems. All kinds of just, of course, only Linnell. Computer charger this, phone won't update that. By the time we finally get going, and then we went a little long, because of course we did. That is what happens when we start talking. Luckily, we have all kinds of time, as Linnell is going to be in for Logan on the Take Command pregame show this weekend. We have all the time in the world. But Linnell and I wrap up, and now all of a sudden I don't really have time to go to the DMV. So I was like, son of a gun, I guess I got to go tomorrow. So I go today, and like my day was kind of weird today, schedule-wise. I had physical therapy this morning, knocked that out. And then I really wanted to work out and didn't have a chance to do that because I couldn't do it before PT. And I was like, you know what? If I just go, knock the DMV out, then I'll have a ton of time at the gym. And that's exactly what I did. And the only hiccup was it actually took me a second to find like the front entrance. The GPS took me to like a back way. And I was like, where is this place? And I was like, aha, I found it. Get in there. I must have waited 15 minutes. I've waited 3 hours at DMVs before.
Oh, I'm already knowing, Craig.
It's the worst.
I'm already knowing.
Like, there was a chance that I was going to have to leave because I was going to have to do the show. Nope. 15 minutes. And I felt like I had like a bit. We've gotten a weird spot where we moved, and as we were moving, like my car registration expired. Like, you have 60 days when you move to change addresses. But when we went to change the address, and like you can do it online, but when I went to change the address, it wouldn't let me because it expired. And like, I obviously didn't want to renew my registration before because I was going to renew it and then need to change the address. So we got in kind of a weird pickle, and I was explaining this to the lady, and she's like, I got you. 15, 20 minutes, even though and most of it was like me having to, we had a camera speeding ticket that I was not aware of.
Woo!
That sucked. Because I was aware of it, I would have paid $25 instead of $60 because of the late fee. But I had to pay that. And then once I was able to pay that on my phone, so most of that time was me like typing in my credit card and stuff, filling out the form. I was in and out in 15 minutes, or in and out in less than 30 minutes. It was amazing.
Those are the best.
The absolute best.
In and out.
Yeah. And then I got a nice long gym session in. Feeling great. It's been a good day, Anthony.
What day was it? Leg day, chest day, arm day, back day?
I did like a 30-minute easy run, and then I did some legs.
I did some legs today too.
Some rehab inspired, but still legitimate leg workout legs.
Nice.
Some split squats with some modifications because I gotta get my foot in the right position.
I still got to get down to Rachel's gym.
Yeah, we gotta get you down there.
Yeah,
we gotta have you take one of her classes. You're gonna die. It's gonna be great.
Nope, I will not die.
Oh, that's part of the fun.
Okay.
Let's see if we can do that next week. We're gonna schedule that. All right. In the meantime, next we will blitz through our NFL tier rankings on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, let's get to our NFL tiers. Normally we do this over the course of about 25 minutes. Anthony, we have to do this in we can give ourselves about 13, 14 minutes probably at most. So we gotta get going. Do you have them in the rundown?
Yes, they are there. Boom.
I see you. There we go. All right. Prime contenders. The four, if you're new to this, because we normally do these at 5:30 on Thursdays, because we're not on tomorrow at 5:30, we're doing them now. We have four categories. Prime contenders, puncher's chance, interesting but not quite good enough, and no chance. Prime contenders is defined as a team we would not be surprised to see in the Super Bowl. Miami Dolphins. They won 30-0. Check. Niners look amazing. Check. Chiefs. Fine performance over the Patriots. Check. Then the Ravens. Check. Then we get to the Eagles and the Cowboys. How do we feel about Philadelphia having lost 3 straight games, Anthony?
I'm not going to overreact here. I'm going to leave them here. Yes, it looks bad that they've lost 3 straight games. But at the same token, I really feel as though they just,
I'm with you. You don't have to justify it further.
Yeah.
I still believe that this team is going to work out its problems. I honestly think this could be one of those things where they look back and they're like, "Oh, that was the stretch we needed. We were flawed, but we needed to lose some games so that people took it seriously and that we actually fixed them." Because it's even if it's too easy to skate by if you keep winning. Yep. This could be the stretch that saves their season, even if it looks bad right now. Cowboys. I can't come off of them after the loss was bad. I can't come off of them yet. They're still 10-4 and one of the best teams in the league, I think.
Cowboys look like the Commanders week 3 when we played the Bills. That's how bad their offense was.
Well, to me, that brings us to a conversation about some of the teams in puncher's chance. Do we need to move the Bills up?
No, I'm not going to overreact because, again,
but
we gave them too much leeway early in the season, Craig. They got to earn their stripes, Craig.
See, to me, though,
big win, though.
The way Allen is playing, I would not be surprised if they're in the Super Bowl.
He didn't do anything last week.
But he did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago he did.
And that's the thing is they won without him doing a bunch. And if it's not all on him, and they had a ton of injuries on defense, and obviously it's McDermott's first time calling plays in a while, if they've figured out some of this defensive stuff, which I know they won a shootout against Philly a couple weeks ago, and then they looked great last week against a Dallas team that's not as good on the road. I don't know, man. I'm willing to wait one more week.
There it is.
But we need to put an asterisk by them to say, hey, if they win again, they need to move up.
The thing is, we probably should move them up just because of the fact they went out here, they dominated a team that's already in prime contenders, and their schedule gets easier. They have the Chargers and then the Patriots, and then they conclude with the Dolphins.
If they blow out the Chargers,
they're going to get
they should.
Easton Stick or whatever his name is. He stinks.
Yeah, I mean, it was real bad. But they've beaten, their last, 3 weeks are
they beat
the Eagles, they beat the Chiefs.
No, they lost to the Eagles.
Or sorry, they lost to the Eagles in a barn burner. But the week before, they blew out the Jets.
Yeah, spanked them.
32-6. They lose in overtime to the Eagles where Allen plays out of his mind. Bills, 20-17 over the Chiefs. They win there.
Yep.
So then they beat the doors off of the Cowboys. So you got 3 teams in a row in prime contenders. They went 2-1, and the one is an overtime loss on the road in Philadelphia.
I love it. Hey, you're going out here and
all right, handle your business, and we'll move you up next.
Exactly.
Week.
Let's go.
All right, Lions. Do they need to move up?
I like them where they are.
I do too. Every time we get close.
Every time.
They do something silly.
Yep.
They finish out with the Vikings, the Cowboys, and then the Vikings again.
Ooh.
Obviously, if they beat the Cowboys, they need to go up.
No question.
But let's see what they do against the Vikings.
Yes, sir.
this weekend, and then if they beat them handily, then we should probably put them up. Although what we'll probably do is wind up being like, well, if they can beat the Cowboys, whichever team wins, because that's what we do. Jags, are they still in puncher's chance, or they need to go down?
Nah, they're still in puncher's chance. Their schedule gets a lot easier, though, and I promise you, Craig, they're probably going to finish the season with the defense really going crazy. But, again, I'm not falling for it. I think they're fool's gold, but I still will leave them in puncher's chance.
Texans, I think, belong there. Rams, I think, belong there. Broncos?
They just lost, right?
They did just lose. They just lost to they got spanked by the Lions.
Yeah, we elevated them. Now we're going to demote them again?
I think so. I mean, I just don't think the Lions and the Broncos belong in the same neighborhood.
You're right.
So, Broncos, sorry, you're going down.
I think we need to move a team up, though.
All right. I think that team is the Cincinnati Bengals.
All right, I think we need to move 2 teams up then.
Oh, who are you going to say?
The Browns.
So here's where I'm going to make – I think we need to make tough calls. Okay. I thought you were going to say the Bengals, and I actually think that they both –
No, the Bengals, I agree. But I think you also – if you're going to move the Bengals up, you also got to move the Browns up.
I actually don't think either of them belong up there. Here's why.
Either?
Here's why.
Talk to me.
This sticks with the definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Puncher's chance. Would you be surprised if they wound up in the AFC, their case, they're both AFC teams, AFC title game?
The thing is with the Bengals, they have a lot of good players. They have the T. Higgins. They have the Jamar Chase. They have
Jamar Chase just got hurt.
He did, but I think he'll be back.
He will eventually.
But if you have to compete against that, Jake Browning, he's going out there, he's performing.
He is.
I think the Bengals can be a maybe. I don't know.
I need to see if Browning keeps playing like this through the end of the season. Fine. But couple games, small sample size. Yeah, they're good. I'm so impressed with Zach Taylor and what he does and how he's found a way to let Browning cook. But would you be surprised if Jake Browning wound up in the AFC title game? Hell yeah, I would. Would I be surprised if Joe Flacco led the Browns to the AFC title game? Hell yeah, I would. I think they're awesome stories. I think they're super interesting. I think they could be pains in the butt. Ultimately, in a playoff game against the Bills, are they going to win? No.
Okay.
So I think they stay.
I can respect it.
All right. Then we get to some teams that I think need to move down potentially. Steelers.
Yes. No chance.
And this is the tough part about the end of the year. You just get the teams where you're just like, hey, are you as bad as the other teams in this category? Like, you almost need a subdivision of no chance. Like, ran out of time and been here. Like, are the Steelers and the Panthers in the same neighborhood?
No.
No, but kinda. You know what? TJ Watt alone keeps the Steelers up for one more week. For one more week. The Falcons, who still could win the division, lost to Carolina. They have no chance.
Yeah.
They have no chance. And this is like, do you think they can make the playoffs?
And they're going back to Taylor Heineke this week.
Yeah, like congrats. Maybe they'll be interesting for the next 3 weeks. They shouldn't be taken seriously. Your punishment for losing Carolina is you have to join them. Seattle, very nice win.
Huge win.
They are teetering on the potential to go up to puncher's chance. Yeah,
they fit the definition. Interesting. Very interesting.
I actually think Seattle. I'm going to put Seattle up.
Ooh.
New Orleans.
No.
Do they need to go down? No, I don't think they need to go down.
I think they just stay.
Yeah. Tampa. Stay. Like, they probably are the best team in that division, but that's not saying much. Indy. Stay.
Yeah, stay, but I like what Indy's doing, Craig.
But
I like
again,
what's brewing over there.
Like, hey, could they make the playoffs and maybe even win a wild card weekend? Yes. Are they making the AFC title game? No. That's what interesting but not quite good enough is.
Hey, they went out here and beat the Ravens before. Their defense is
right,
playing
but you got to do
better.
that twice. You got to do that twice to make when you're a wild card team to make the title game. You're not winning, and winning that second one is hard. Green Bay.
Staying pat.
Minnesota.
They got one more week. to move down.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think the quarterback stuff might finally catch up with them.
Yeah.
And they've got, who were we just talking about that
The
they've
Lions
got?
twice.
Yeah, Lions twice. Yeah, it's going to be a rough end of the season for them. Bengals, Browns, Broncos, all interesting, but not quite good enough. Carolina, congrats on your win. You're still no chance. Arizona, the Giants, New England, Tennessee. Tennessee?
They just
They're
lost.
they're still too far away.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They did just lose to the Texans.
The Texans.
Fought them close. They're probably the best of this bunch. Vegas,
No.
Jets, Commanders, Chargers, Falcons. I will say the Falcons don't really belong with those other teams, but you lose to Carolina, and that's your punishment.
Yeah.
That is, you get to go to Poopy Town. You hate to see it. All right, that's our NFL tiers. We'll do them a couple more times heading into the playoffs over the next couple weeks on Thursday. Typically, that's at 5:30. Again, our show short tomorrow, but we'll be back with the full edition on Friday. When we get back to wrap up this edition, full edition of the Hoffman Show, real things, real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, wrapping up on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. BetMGM tonight follows us, as it does most nights here on the Team 980. So last night, NBA action, Anthony. Is this Ali LaForce clip, by the way, that you pulled? Is that Steph?
Yep.
Okay, so I can tell this story and then hit the button. But Jaylen Brown made a grave mistake. The Celtics were cruising against the Warriors, finals rematch from a couple years ago, and Jaylen gets Steph on the post and backs him down, scores, and won. And then he does what I think is the dumbest current celebration in all of sports, the too small. Now, Anthony, you're younger than me. You're more in touch with the culture than me. But you also nodded your head.
I mean, if I'm Jaylen Brown in that situation, I don't do that because that's poking the bear. And sometimes you don't want to poke those kinds of bears.
No.
You know, those greats that you're playing against.
I just think it's so dumb. Now, look, have I yelled too small when I posted up a smaller player before? Yeah. But
all the way down to the ground.
Yeah, it's clown behavior.
I think I will only do that if me and whoever was, going at it, if we were really passionately going at it. He was trash talking, I'm trash talking. Now that's a part of my trash talk. Or if it's a joking manner, I get one little bucket.
Yeah, would I do that? Would I do that to you?
Man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would I expect you also to do that right back to me? Even though I'm 4 inches taller than you?
If I posted you up at score, I would definitely say, Craig, you're too small for me.
Yeah. You know what I would do? I would just lay in the ground in the fetal position and cry. But to do it, NBA, there's certain stuff that you're all in the NBA. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
He's not. Okay. What is he going to say to you? Not good enough? Too bad? All-star Jaylen Brown, $300 million Jaylen Brown. I'm Steph Curry. I'm that mamma jamma, if you will. Well, what did he actually say? Let's find out, shall we?
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
So before that point that Jaylen Brown poked the bear, Steph Curry, I believe, had 16 points. Afterwards, he had 20 and a Warriors win locked up. Post-game with Ali LaForce on TNT.
How much do you live for these late-game pressure moments?
Probably shouldn't ask me that.
We already know the answer to that.
You probably shouldn't ask me that.
Don't ask him that, man.
And he also hit the night-night on him.
Put them boys to sleep.
I should have worn my Steph Curry night-night.
Did you see what Shaq said in the on NBA, I guess inside the NBA after the game?
He said that Steph is better than he was, and that which Shaq never says.
Yeah.
Shaq thinks he's the greatest ever.
Yep.
Except for actually, sometimes Shaq has a very odd reverence for certain people, and Steph has apparently entered that category. He said it's time to start talking about Steph as the greatest of all time.
But I feel like people have I think he's already been in that discussion, to be honest. Well, as far as I don't know. Maybe they say greatest point guard, but they've never really said greatest player of all time.
Steph Curry's, I am an enormous Steph Curry fan. Mm-hmm. He's not the greatest player of all time. And it's not, you can mention him if your list goes 10 deep. I think he's probably a top 10 player of all time.
Yeah,
I think he's pushing the top 5, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, he's revolutionized the way the game is played. I think that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But LeBron James is a significantly better basketball player. And it's hard. There are 2 to 3 guys maybe who are significantly better than Steph Curry. LeBron James is one.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan is the other. In terms of modern 1970 on, Bill Russell's so hard to judge. He played in an 8-team league, and not that he wasn't great. It's just hard to compare eras in that way. I mean, Magic was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think if
Magic has become underrated. I think just people are silly about that.
People don't know basketball.
Magic Johnson played 12 NBA seasons. He went to 9 finals.
A dog.
The only person that's ever done that, something similar, obviously he only won 5. But LeBron's stretch in the 2010s where he went to 8 straight finals is the only thing that's close. And what's crazy about LeBron is he's played an additional 10 years on top of that on either end of that stretch.
Yeah.
Obviously, Magic's career tragically cut short with the HIV. But yeah, crazy. By the way, 55 or 56?
55,
I remember
48.
Okay, I remember the 48 part.
Yeah.
So we got 30 seconds left.
Yeah.
How about some cute advice from Matthew Stafford's kids? Actually, shoot. No, we don't have time to play this. Son of a gun. Guaranteed in Real Things tomorrow, probably a clip from Hard Knocks, new episode out now. Excited for that. And other than that, we'll see you for a very short 30-minute show tomorrow. Well, I'll see you. Anthony gets the day off. And then Anthony and I will see you again on Friday. It's the Hoffman Show, Team 980. See ya mañana.